We begin on a rainy Tuesday morning inside the Jackson family funeral home. Everyone was dressed in black and the room was filled with soft weeping. As funerals go, this one was already on track to be unforgettable and not for the right reasons. Grandma Edna had died 2 days earlier, and the funeral, a solemn event for most families, was supposed to be the moment of closure. The Bennetts, however, were not your typical family. As they gathered in the front pews, little Timmy, Grandma's youngest grandson, fidgeted with the remote control. His mom, Stacy, was too busy pretending to cry to notice. Timmy, being all of 7 years old and highly tech-savvy, had volunteered to manage the playlist for the ceremony. After all, it's just music, right? So when the funeral director, a solemn man with an impeccable sense of formality, nodded at Timmy to start the music, the last thing anyone expected to hear was, well, heavy metal. As the room filled with screeching guitars and a vocalist growling something about Satan's inferno, the assembled mourners froze. Was this some kind of avant-garde expression of grief? Of course not. Little Timmy had selected the wrong playlist. Aunt Marge leapt to her feet, gasping like a fish out of water. "Timmy, turn that off!" she screeched. But Timmy, bless his heart, was having difficulty with the remote. As the metalhead howled about hellfire, Timmy cycled through the tracks, death metal, rap, disco. Finally, the boy managed to find the funeral hymns. After what felt like an eternity of genre hopping, there was an awkward silence. Uncle Joe coughed loudly as Aunt Marge scowled, but the funeral proceeded. That was when the eulogy began. Aunt Marge insisted on speaking, though she had not exactly been Grandma Edna's favorite. Marge stood up, cleared her throat dramatically, and began. Edna was a remarkable woman, she started. Marge trailed off. She couldn't quite recall what was so remarkable about Edna. She had written something down, but of course, she had lost the paper. So she improvised. She loved to knit, Marge lied, despite knowing full well Edna hated knitting. She also was a huge fan of, what was that show? That one with the people who dance? She stammered as the crowd shifted uncomfortably. In a desperate attempt to sound sentimental, Marge started telling embarrassing stories about Edna's last years in the nursing home. These anecdotes involved Edna's peculiar flatulence problem, her failed bingo strategies, and that one time she fell asleep at the community center only to wake up and think she had crossed into the afterlife. By now, any shred of dignity that had survived the death metal debacle was long gone, but that wasn't the worst of it. The real problem came when the funeral director wheeled in the casket. As the family gathered around to say their last goodbyes, Uncle Joe was the first to notice something off. He stared at the body inside and whispered to Stacy, honey, I don't think this is Edna," Stacy gasped. "Of course, it's Edna. Who else would it be?" Uncle Joe pointed. The corpse in the casket was not their sweet, wrinkled, 90-year-old grandma. It was a very different, very male body. Panic spread through the family as they realized Grandma Edna's body had been switched with another funeral's. "Dear God, that's not her," Aunt Marge shrieked, clutching her pearls. Timmy tugged on his mom's sleeve. "Does this mean Grandma's a ghost now?" The funeral director rushed back in, white as a sheet. After a lot of apologies and confusion, it was revealed that Grandma Edna had been sent to the wrong room. But before the family could process this bizarre mistake, there was another shock in store. As the will was read, everyone sat on the edge of their seats. Grandma Edna had been known for her odd sense of humor, but no one was prepared for the strange conditions she had attached to her estate. In order to inherit her fortune, the family had to complete certain, tasks. The first challenge, they had to perform a synchronized dance routine in the funeral home while dressed in costumes representing different animals. Naturally, everyone refused. Aunt Marge shouted, "This is ridiculous! I won't be made a fool of." But the attorney calmly pointed out that if they didn't comply, the inheritance would be donated to a very niche charity, Clowns Without Borders. Grandpa Joe grumbled, but eventually agreed to play along. And so, in the most bizarre twist of a day, the Bennetts found themselves stumbling through an awkward chicken dance, wearing ridiculous animal costumes, while mourners from another funeral watched in horrified fascination. The only thing worse than performing this humiliating spectacle was knowing that somewhere, Grandma Edna was probably laughing hysterically. After the performance, everyone collapsed into the pews, panting and out of breath. There was one final letter to be read, a posthumous message from Grandma herself. In it, she explained that she had orchestrated everything from beyond the grave. She wanted to teach her family one final lesson. Life was too short to be taken seriously. Her last words: "Remember, laughter is eternal, even in death." The Bennetts exchanged glances. Had Grandma orchestrated this entire fiasco? Was the playlist switch, the wrong body, the humiliating dance, all part of her grand scheme? Timmy, now holding the remote again, clicked the button. A soft melody filled the air. No metal, no rap, just peace. For now.